As we begin our service, I want to open with the words from Unitarian Universalist minister, Reverend William F. Schwartz. And I'm lighting our chalice right now, as you can see. This is the mission of our faith, to teach the fragile art of hospitality, to revere both the critical mind and the generous heart, to prove that diversity need not mean divisiveness, and to witness all that we must hold the world in our hands.
Good morning. Welcome to the First Unitarian Church of Chicago online service. I am Jim Proctor, a member of this congregation. I'm a member of the choir, the Good Relations Committee, the Ministerial Internship Team, and the Pastoral Care Team. And I'm glad to serve as your worship associate this morning. We are a Unitarian Universalist congregation, a community of children, youth, and adults, a people of many beliefs and traditions, bound not by the specific list of things we believe, but the values we share, and the mission to grow our souls and heal the world. Whether you are joining us online for the first time, or you've worshiped with us 1,000 times, you are welcome here. Whether you believe in God some of the time, all of the time, or none of the time, you are welcome here. No matter how much money is in your pocket, no matter if you have a PhD, a GED, or no degree, you belong here. We are a people of many races and beliefs. We are a people of many genders and sexual orientations. All of you is sacred. All of you is welcome. You belong here. I invite you now to be present in this moment. Let us enter into this service together as we share the reading of the covenant. Love is the spirit of this church, and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Now, in pre-COVID times, when we could all actually be in church with each other, we would sing our doxology together. But I'm going to invite you to read the doxology along with me, which will be posted on the screen. Let those who live in every land
declare that
fear and war are done, joined by the labor of their hands, in love and understanding one. I'm going to turn this over to Mama Edie McLeod Armstrong for a time for all ages.
Habarigani, everyone.
Habarigani.
And of course, with this being the second day of Kwanzaa, the response would be Kuji Chagulia, Asante Sana, and you want to ask them, Habarigani, do you know what the news is? But what we're going to do now is that we're going to move into a story experience that will fall within a time for all ages. And this is actually a pre-recorded multidisciplinary presentation of a story with music. And so what I hope that it will remind you of is that many of us have questioned our beauty, our own natural beauty. And when we're no longer distracted by wondering whether or not we are beautiful, that we do have value, then we can focus on the things that will continue to lift us up and to give us a better world. So I hope you enjoy this story.
As we think of all the people and the cultures around the world, so rich, speaking so many different languages and having so many different beliefs and different customs, I'm reminded of how appreciative I am of being a child of African descent, to have cousins all over the world. This is a story that is dedicated to my Spanish-speaking cousins that I first heard told by Antonio Sacre, wonderful storyteller, who even developed a book from it called The Barking Mouse. And this is based on a Cuban folktale. Goes like this. Había una vez una familia de ratoncitas. Once upon a time, there was a family of little mice. There was mamá ratón, papá ratón, y hermana, or sister, and hermano, or brother. And so mommy looked up at the sky and she said, oh, familia mía, mi familia. Mira el cielo hermoso. Look at that beautiful sky. She said, yo tengo una buena idea. I have a good idea. Vamos a comer en el parque. Let's go and eat in the park. The children were so excited, they said, hooray! Oh, child, mommy started cooking, child. She made some pollo frito. Now, you know you can't have no cookout without some pollo frito. She made papas or potatoes. She had frutas, all kinds of fruits. And then she put everything into a big canasta, a big basket. Papi said, He said, that's going to be poquito pesada, a little bit heavy. Pero no te preocupes, don't worry about it. Porque mira mis músculos grandes. Mommy said, oh, papi, go on. And so they gathered everything up and off to the park they went. Oh, mommy found a perfect spot. She spread out the blanket and she told the children, come on, children, you know, help me out now. So she picked up the food and put it on the blanket. They picked up the food and put it on the blanket. Picked up the food and put it on the blanket. They picked up the food and put it on the blanket. They picked up the food and put it on the blanket. Mommy said, estamos listos. We're ready. But then the children said, ay, mami, we don't want to eat right now. Vamos a jugar. We want to go and play. And so they did. They took off running. They started playing spin around and fell down. They got up and started playing football or soccer. But then all of a sudden, Hermana noticed where they were. She said, hermano. He said, sí. She said, yo quiero que el señor gato vive aquí. I think that Mr. Cat lives here. He said, ah, no te preocupes, don't worry about it. Yo no tengo miedo, little gato. I ain't scared of no cat. She said, well, me neither. So they played and played, and played. They played and played and played. But then, el señor gato came along. Ba-dum, 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 ba-dum. Oh, Lord have mercy. There he was with those great big ojos verdes, those great big dientes grandes, those big green eyes, those great big teeth. And they said, hola gato, pero no dijo nada. Again, they said, hola gato, but he still didn't talk to them. They decided they were going to tease him. So they said, gato, 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 gato. You think that cat like that? Child, not one bit. He jumped down off that fence. He began running after them, and they were calling, mami, papi, ayúdanos, ayúdanos, help us, help us, help us. Oh my goodness, they were running, corriendo, corriendo. And when they got back to where mommy and papi were, they were smooching. They were like, ew, mami, papi, mira el gato está aquí. And so mommy said, ay, papi, Dios mío. She said, what are we going to do? And papi said, no te preocupes, don't worry about it. Yo no tengo miedo, little gato. I ain't scared of no cat. She said, okay, then do something. And he did. You know what papi did? Child, he ran and hid behind his wife. Detrás de su esposa. And hermana ran back there. And hermano ran back there. And the cat was getting cerca y más cerca, closer and closer. And she said, ay, Dios mío. And she looked at that cat as he was standing there dead in her face. And with everything she had inside of her, she got an idea. Looked at that cat and said, ruff. That cat looked at her. She said, I think it's working. So she tried again. Ruff. That cat jumped back. And then all of a sudden, he started running. And the family started barking and barking, barking and barking. And the cat was running. He was gone. He was running so fast that when he was finally gone, the little mouse family, they were laying in the grass laughing. And then mommy said, as they began to pick up everything and prepare to go back home, now you see, children, it's like I always say, es muy importante para hablar otro idioma. it's very important to know how to speak another language. They had learned to speak dog. I love that story, and I share it in the spirit of the need for us to care enough to connect with each other, to communicate with each other, and through the power of our words, not to put each other down, but to lift each other up and to help all of us to see the natural beauty within us and the natural potential and strength within us. And so a song that I'd like to leave you with is one that's done by Tite Curet Alonso, a brother from Puerto Rico, who's written a song called Las Caras Lindas de mi Gente Negra. The beautiful faces of my black people are like a parade of molasses and bloom. That even though they've known great pain and they've known tears, they've also known joy. They know melody and dance, and they know great love. In fact, their lives have been like sheer poetry. So here's the song. Las caras lindas de mi gente negra son un desfile de melaza en flor, y cuando pasan frente me alegra de que negrura todo el corazón. Las caras lindas de mi raza prieta llenen de llanto, de pena y dolor. Son las verdades, la vida rieta, pero que llevan dentro mucho amor.
Somos la melaza que ríe, somos la melaza que llora, somos la melaza que ama.
Y en cada beso es conmovedora. Por eso vivo orgullosa de su colorido. Somos de tu amable, de clara poesía. Llenen su ritmo, melodía, las caras lindas de mi gente negra. Llenen su ritmo, llenen melodía, las caras lindas de mi gente negra. Las caras lindas de mi gente negra. Las caras lindas de mi gente negra.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
I do see some applause and I see some people in the chat speaking out. So I hope everybody enjoyed the Barky Mouse, Las Caras Lindas. It's my pleasure now to introduce to some and renew the acquaintance of others, Kapano Muhammad. She will be singing The Little Drummer Girl.
Come on, they told me for you on my drum. Ba-da-ba-bum-bum. Every night in his excellent length of time, I played my drum for him. I played my best for him. Then he smiled at me and my drum, me and my drum. Ba-da-bum-bum-bum, ba-da-bum-bum-bum, ba-ba-ba-da-bum-bum-bum, ba-da-bum-bum-bum. Me and my drum, me and my drum, me and my drum, ba-da-bum-bum-bum, ba-da-bum-bum-bum, ba-da-bum-bum-bum.
And if you want, you can applaud gently for Kapano Muhammad. Now is the time for prayer and meditation. Prayer is a solemn request for help or an expression of thanks addressed to God or an object of worship, while meditation involves stilling the noise in our mind. The purpose of meditation is to help us connect with something beyond ourselves. It is the stillness of the mind that distinguishes prayer from meditation. Soren Kierkegaard was quoted as saying, "The function of prayer is not to influence God, but rather to change the nature of the one who prays." So in the spirit of prayer and meditation, I invite you to close your eyes, relax, breathe slowly, and in the span of 7 breaths, think on those things that are good and that you enjoy. As we prepare to return to the now, this is the time for us to acknowledge those in need of our thoughts and prayer, such as the family of our own Julia E. Liz Harris, who recently passed. And if you wish, you may name them aloud or enter those names in the chat.
Andrea Benelli, Elizabeth Orgain, John Orgain,
Diane Peoples,
Diane Peoples,
Maxwell McLeod, Senior and Junior,
Hilton Posey,
Elijah
Christine Smith
Armstrong,
McLeod, Edith
Boyd
Wilson,
Hobson, Carla Balin,
Richard Pardo,
John Leary,
Herb Hill,
Daniel Rainey,
Mary Lee and Andrew Greeley,
Andre Gatson,
Jay, Earl and Charlotte Adams,
Dorothy Johnson,
Ashe,
Eric Pope,
Albertine
Sylvester
Posey,
Peoples,
Jay,
Leo Credit,
Mildred Clark,
Ronald Smith,
Ashe,
Ruth Fogg,
Paul Bivens,
Mr. Dean,
Daniel McLeod,
Jay.
We ask peace and blessing for all those named and those remembered in silence. So let it be. Amen. Ashe. I'm going to turn it back over to Mama Edie. She will prepare the Kwanzaa table, and then we will invite some of the members and friends of First Unitarian to talk about the significance of the 7 principles.
Habarigani.
Kujichagulia,
All
Asante
right,
Sana.
that's what I'm talking about. So we know that we're asking, what's the news? What's the news for the day? And for those of us who are honoring Kwanzaa, which is everybody here now, then that second day of Kwanzaa for Kujichagulia, that's the news. So we say Kujichagulia, Asante Sana, thank you very much. And you ask it back. Habari Gani, you ask the person who asked you, do you know what the news is for the day? And then they would respond back, Kujichagulia, Asante Sana. And then you go on and laugh about who had to have the most coaxing to guess it, to get the word correctly, and then you move on. But Kwanzaa, most of you know, was established by Maulana Ran Karenga in 1966 and has become very, very dear to many of us across the country, and even people in other countries beyond the United States, especially children of African descent, are beginning to embrace these principles of Kwanzaa. Now I'm going to look at my piano here, which is my Kwanzaa table, and I will begin by mentioning that there are many different ways that people can approach this. Looking at this wonderful celebration that we have, sometimes there are people who are a little bit concerned about whether or not they should get started because they don't know all the answers, they don't have all the information, and you don't need to know everything perfectly in order to celebrate Kwanzaa. You need to know some basic ideas about it. For the Kwanzaa table, we need 7 basic elements, 7 basic ritual items that we have. So the first is that we need the foundation. We need the mkeka mat. And I'd like for you all to try to say these Kiswahili words with me, this language from East Africa, especially from Kenya, Uganda, and what have you. Mkeka mat, mkeka, mkeka. And we know that our lives have to be built upon a firm foundation. Otherwise, we don't have any guidance. We don't know which way to go. So many of us honor the 10 commandments. That forms a guidepost for us. That is part of the firm foundation. There are other traditions that also have principles and practices that form a firm foundation, because without it, we're like willows in the wind. And then upon the mkeka mat, we have the kinara. If you'll please say kinara, kinara, spelled Kinara. And the kinara is the candle holder that represents the one stalk of life that we all came from. Whether we want to acknowledge it or not, we all came from this one stalk. And I have here, this is the first kinara that I ever bought, which had to have been in like 1973. And it's actually the branch of a tree that has been hollowed out, which ends up being another example of kuumba, of creativity. How do you take something from the land and make what it is that you need? And I remember at some point that Baba Timuel Black had mentioned about how he remembers that back in the day, people would just make do, you would figure out how to make do with what it is that you had and shared your resources. And that's what we have done. And then we have the candles called the Mshuma. So one candle is an Mshuma, but more than one candle are called Mishuma. So we have the Mishuma Saba, the 7 candles that represent each of the 7 principles, which we will go into those as we continue along. And then we have the Masao, the fruits and vegetables. Please say Masao, Masao. The more we say these words, the more familiar they become in our ear, and then the easier it is to pronounce them in the future. So we have the Masao, which represents the fruits of our labor. So the actual word Kwanzaa, spelled only with one A in Kiswahili, means fruits. But Dr. Karenga added an additional A to it. So we have 7 letters for 7 principles, and it also refers to the first fruits of our labors. And so it's a time for us to look back over our achievements, our efforts of the year, even the calamities that took place during the year, and to determine what did we learn from them? What did we achieve? What did we accomplish? What is an inspiration that we have to move forward from? So that is the masao, the fruits and vegetables. And then we have, let's see, we have the corn, which many people will use the Indian corn. I don't know if you guys are seeing this. I'm not seeing any of this. I'm just seeing our technician here. But I'm hoping that you're seeing the table and the items. Okay, it's just me and you. Okay. And the corn is very special. There needs to be at least 1 ear of corn on each table to represent each child in the household. And that's because the children represent life. And when we consider the corn, we consider the infinite nature of life. We know that life doesn't end, it simply changes its form. And with 1 kernel of corn, you can plant it and you end up with a corn plant. And then you keep on planting from that 1 plant, and then you can end up with a whole field of corn, and it all began with just 1. And that's just how special we are. Each of us is like a kernel of corn. And when we plant, whatever we plant, into the hearts of others or into this world, it's going to grow something. And so we need to be careful about the nature, about the kind and quality of seeds that we plant so that we end up growing, nurturing foods, soul stuff, if you will, that can help to lift each other up and move forward. And then we have, let's see, so there were 7. We have 1, 2, 3, the corn, 4, we have the masao, 5, and then we have gifts, which anything, oftentimes we encourage people to be creative. Again, along with the 5th principle of Kwanzaa, and make the gifts that we give to each other. So here is a gift, a little doll who is exemplifying a gift that we can give to children or anyone else. So my friend, who was more like my little brother Miguel, gave this doll to me. He's given me so many, no, he didn't give me this doll, but he gave me this doll from Bolivia, who I love. Every time Miguel goes to a Spanish-speaking country, he brings me back another doll. And I love him for it. And one of the things that it reminds me of is that we as children of African descent, especially as a result of the transatlantic slave trade, we have cousins all over the world. And so this little doll is from Bolivia, and they're children of African descent, also in Bolivia. And so Kwanzaa is a time, it was developed primarily to help African Americans understand that we are worthy of celebration. And it gave us a foundation, it gave us a ritual, it gave us a tradition that we could embrace. Because for so long, people in my generation and in generations past, for many, many, many of us, I almost want to say most of us, the only thing that we knew about being children of African descent was what we saw on Tarzan, or what we could see in National Geographic at that time, and who would want to relate to that? And so you would end up hearing people saying things like, I ain't no African, because they had not yet learned what there was to be proud of in being a child of African descent. of understanding the contributions that we had made, either willingly or by force, contributions nonetheless, and to understand that we have relatives all over the world that we call the African diaspora. And as exemplified in the story with the barking mouse, that was a traditional folk tale from Cuba, or in Spanish, they would say Cuba. And there are so many children of African descent in Cuba. There are children of African descent in Bolivia. There are stories that we can tell bilingually, like I did with the story of the barking mouse. Here is a book called Baila Nana Baila, means dance, Nana, dance. And we can learn each other's rhythms, each other's languages, each other's philosophies, and each other's stories. This is an author, Isabel Allende, who is an Afro-Peruvian. She was born in Peru, but she was raised in Chile. And she has written a book called Island Beneath the Sea. It is phenomenal. And so reading books written by people other than Americans can definitely give us a different perspective. And we can come to know a bit more how similar our stories actually are. And that in many cases, they're pretty much the same story. And we can learn that just like the heroine in her book, that there are stories that we can tell to each other, that we can research and learn about, that can give us inspiration, that can give us some additional guideposts, that can give us hope and a knowing that there's so much that we can do, that we can achieve, that we can contribute. And we know that we have contributed. Here's a book written by Sheikh Anta Diop, The African Origin of Civilization, Myth or Reality. Well, we know, if we didn't know before, we know now that that is a reality, the African origin of civilization. I can't tell you how many times I'll go to do a storytelling performance and I may ask, especially if I'm doing a performance for children, and I ask them, if we're doing like Black history or something, and I may ask them, so when do you think that the history of Black people began? And they always take me back to, they may say in slavery. So we have millions of children who believe that the history of Black folks started in slavery. That is almost sacrilege, to have generations of children grow up to be grown folks believing that the lives of Black folk began as slaves. The African origin of civilization. And there's so much that we can learn when we look into history and sociology and even linguistics beyond this country. An elder who was very dear to me, Baba Jacob Carruthers, wrote this book. Well, he's written many books, but this particular one I especially love, called Medu Neter, Divine Speech. And it can serve as a reminder that the purpose of our speech at its highest level is not to simply shuck and jive. It's not to simply always try to have our way. It is a method by which we have the potential to connect with each other. And at its highest level, therefore also connecting with the divine. So Kwanzaa is a time for reading and telling stories. And telling stories that are often untold, like Henry's Freedom Box. About Henry Box Brown, have you heard the story about the young man who was enslaved, got himself boxed up with the help of some Quakers? They plugged some holes into the box and shipped that brother to Philadelphia, to freedom. 3 days, at least 3 days of travel. Now, can you imagine yourself being scrunched up in a box with just little holes, and you know you can't have a washroom in a box. So when you imagine what he went through, when you imagine what he had to endure that would have him willing to go through that, to get to freedom, to feel like a human being, it can motivate us to be sure that we don't allow something like that to happen again, which unfortunately is still happening. But that's another story. There's still people, children especially, being kidnapped. We know of the girls who were kidnapped by Boko Haram, and many of them have still not been returned to their homes. And then there were 300 young boys who were kidnapped from their school, and some of them have been returned, but not all. So they're being sold into slave trafficking. So there are situations happening beyond these shores that we need to be aware of. We can't just stop caring when we get to the borders of the country, because whatever is happening over there, wherever over there happens to be, impacts us. We are all part of the human family. We're part of the human race, although many of us don't seem to get that and don't seem to know quite what being a human being is about. But Kwanzaa is one of those times where we can be reminded of that, where we can be reminded that, like this sister, Dr. Sheila Walker, has produced this video called Scattered Africa, Faces and Voices of the African Diaspora. As she had gone through her college years and beyond, she had these different interviews that I'd done very similar things when I've traveled. I've had what I call orientation, reality orientation conversations with people in other countries who are thinking, oh, America, oh, the United States, oh, I'm gonna come there, and they're looking for a land of milk and honey and streets paved with gold, and they just have to know the realities. They have to know the realities. And as she talked to all these different people, children of African descent, in many places around the world, she found, as I found, how much our stories were the same and how much they continue to be the same. Eventually, she was able to develop a conference that brought many of these people who she had been talking to for so many years together, and they were able to sit face to face and have these conversations among their African cousins, and to also remember to acknowledge other parts of our ancestry also. I have this item up here that was made by a friend of mine that reminds me of our native ancestry. And of course, we need to remember the wisdom of our elders. I'm mentioning Baba Tim again today, Baba Timuel Black again today, because this man who has contributed so much, and Baba Tim, I hope I'm not embarrassing you, and I know this is not supposed to be the Baba Tim hour, but I'm so grateful for the contributions you have made, not only to the people of Chicago, but to the people of the world, to the consciousness of folks who need to have consciousness raising. You hear more frequently the term being woke. Well, Baba Tim is one of those people who was helping to wake folk up. And he has said of the elders, as he talked about how disgusted he has been with the response of this business of the federal government to this business with the COVID and what have you, and talking about the apparent value of elders in terms of how this whole process has been handled. And he was saying that not only do we need to respect our elders, but we need to take care of them. And I mean, look at me, I'm gonna be 70 next year, so I guess I'm Some of my elders call me a junior elder, but we need to take care of each other. We especially need to take care of our elders. And we need to sit down and talk to them, find out what their stories were. Oh my gosh, some amazing, amazing stories. My mother told me all kinds of stories that continue to fascinate me about our own personal family history. So Kwanzaa is the time for us to pull ourselves together, to go inside of ourselves. Take a peek. She was tired, needed to take a nap, so we're gonna let her rest. It's a time for us to still ourselves, like Brother Joe had us to do earlier on, to be still, be quiet. Turn off the music for a while, turn off the TV, turn off the talking, and just be still and know God. Whatever you may call that omniscient being, to be still and find that divinity within yourself. Then we're better able to see that divinity in others. Once we can see divinity in others, the rest of it is gravy. We won't even be inclined to mistreat other people because we will see the God in them. So Kwanzaa is an opportunity for us to have that kind of focus, to have traditions and practices where we can come together and encourage this kind of thinking within each other. And I'm grateful that there are people of other cultures who want to share this tradition with us as children of African descent. I think it's just a wonderful thing. And so I give you personal thanks in that regard. I believe we have hit all 7 principles. We've got the Mkekamat. You can say it again with me just to review. We've got the Mkekamat. We have the Kanara. We have the Mishuma Saba. We have the corn is called Vibunzi, or sometimes it's called Muhindi. We have the fruits and vegetables called Masao. And we have the gifts, and the gifts which can be books, which can be dolls, it can be music. And this book of music, produced by Sweet Honey in the Rock, reminds us that we who believe in freedom cannot rest. So now we're going to go into the candle lighting, okay? So we have some wonderful family members from First Unitarian Church who are going to help us with the lighting of the candles. And they will speak briefly. We're hoping for maybe 2 minutes or so, or under, if possible. If you just got a burning desire, you just got to say a little something more. Just keep in mind that we've got 7 principles to do, but we want you to come and, more than anything, speak your heart, okay? So as we light the candles, I'll explain first of all that we start with the black candle. Of course, we use the colors red, black, and green. We know that the red is for the blood that has been shed, for the blood of our people. The black is for the people themselves. The green is for the land of Africa, of hope, of inspiration, and life. And so we have for Umoja, for the lighting of our Umoja candle, we have Cook County President Tony Preckwinkle. And thank you again so much for joining us. So I'm going to light the candle here on this end as she speaks. And everyone please say Umoja.
Umoja. Good morning. This is Tony Preckwinkle. I want to thank Joe Harrington for inviting me to be part of our church's Kwanzaa service. And I hope everyone had a safe and peaceful holiday. And I wish everyone the best in the new year. I was asked to speak about one of the 7 principles, and that, of course, is Umoja. Umoja means to strive to and maintain unity in the family, the community, the nation, and our race. And it emphasizes the importance of togetherness, which is reflected in the African proverb, I am because we are. At the end of such a difficult and challenging year and during the pandemic, we may not have been able to get together in person with our family and loved ones for the holidays, but I know we're strong and resilient and we're still together in spirit. The Kwanzaa celebration reminds us that whether or not we're physically together, the important part is that we feel connected. Our communities have suffered this year, but our sense of togetherness has helped us weather the storm. And we've found new and creative ways to connect with our communities, families, and friends. I look forward to better days in the year ahead. Happy Kwanzaa to you all, and thank you.
Ashe. Thank you. Thank you so much. And then for the second principle for Kujichagulia, we have Baba Timuel Black and Sister Zenobia Johnson Black. And for the second day, we light the first red candle for Kujichagulia. We light the first red candle that's closest to the black. So everyone, please say with me, Kujichagulia.
Kujichagulia.
All right now. See, the speech therapist in me helps me to come up with some fancy ways to help folks remember how to say stuff. Kujichagulia. Okay, please.
Today we celebrate the second principle of the Nguzo Saba, Kujichagulia, self-determination. Tim?
Yes, self-determination for me at 102 has been that I believe that in the future that it can be a better world, a better life, and therefore I had a responsibility on my belief, and self-determination was a part of that. As I made my decision to make this a better world by starting where I was, in a community, in a country, and therefore, like Dr. King, a better world, we shall overcome. That is the habit that I inherited from my ancestors.
And the important aspect, one important aspect of self-determination is your right to vote.
Ashe. Ashe. Thank you. Thank you so much. And I am so moved and impressed and inspired that at 102, Baba Tim is still going strong. Just recently had his 102nd birthday. And as a historian, a scholar, an author, just a great humanitarian and activist, I thank you. Again, I thank you so much for your many contributions to us. And then for the third principle, which is Ujima. Everybody please say Ujima. Okay, I hear some people already saying it now. Come on. Ujima. Ujima is for cooperative, for collective work and responsibility. And we have Kristen Faust who will share some thoughts with us on that.
Joe Harrington and Jim Proctor, thank you for inviting me and the entire First Unitarian family to your Kwanzaa celebration. I want to acknowledge that Kwanzaa is rooted in both ancient African harvest celebrations and the Black Freedom Movement. And it's a special time of remembrance, reflection, and recommitment for people of the African community throughout the world. It's a holiday created in the 20th century by Black people for Black people, but the principles are so compelling and universal that it draws us all in. So again, I thank you for welcoming me as a guest at your table to learn about and share the third principle of Kwanzaa, Ujima, also known, as you heard Mama Edie say, as collective work and responsibility. An expanded definition of Ujima is to build and maintain our community together, and to make our brothers and sisters' problems our problem, and to solve them together. What I find so inspiring about Kwanzaa are the 7 principles, the Nguzo Saba, and how they represent values that we all might strive for. With Ujima, it's the collective approach to problem solving that's so powerful. I don't solve your problem for you. We solve it together, learning and growing from each other to make a better world. Where do you see first you practice Ujima? I see it in our work in our criminal justice task force, where with our brothers and sisters formerly incarcerated, we problem solve together to bring agreed upon change. And I see it in upcoming opportunities to participate in the Good Relations Behavioral Covenant workshops. Working together in the best interest of the church and the broader community is the call of Ujima. Let's together feel the power and inspiring energy of collective problem solving to repair, restore, and renew our First You community and the world in 2021.
Ashe, ashe. Thank you so much. Excellent. Thank you so much. All right. And you'll notice that I'm alternating as I like the candle started with the black, went to the first red closest to the black, then you come over to the first green. So now I'm going to the second red one for Ujamaa, which is for cooperative economics. And we will hear from Stephen and Catherine Stern.
Obviously, my wife is not here. She's at work on call. This is Stephen on behalf of both of us. What is Ujima? The term stands for the principle, as she indicated, of cooperative economics in Kwanzaa. It's articulated as to build and maintain our stores, shops, and other businesses to profit from them together. What are our stores, shops, and businesses? It is generally understood to mean African-American stores, shops, and businesses in African-American communities. What does it mean to build and maintain? It means not only to shop in them, but also to advocate for the creation, both as an individual and as a community. One way we can build and maintain businesses as a community is to advocate that governmental licenses, zoning, tax incentives, and other laws and vehicles be awarded to our community to allow the creation of such shops and businesses to come into existence and to be maintained. What other businesses, by the term other businesses, are included in this principle? I submit it includes not only retail merchandising businesses, which I think most people think of firstly, but also businesses involving education, our schools, housing for everyone, healthcare, including mental health care, and child care to start with. So we would be trying to deal with and grow and maintain and build those type of businesses within our community that would be meaningful for our community. There's a saying that a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. What that principle requires of us is that we consciously take whatever steps we can, however small they may be, to build and maintain our shops, stores, and businesses. And when we do this, we will be practicing Ujamaa. Thank you.
Ashe, thank you so much. Thank you, Brother Stephen, and give love to your wife. Tell her we felt her spirit here with us. Ashe. So Ujamaa, and I'll mention too, that again, if you have 2 A's at the end of a Kiswahili word, each vowel gets its own pulse. So Ujamaa. And so we have that for cooperative economics. And as Brother Stephen was saying, it's not just the shops and the stores where we go. The educational institutions are also key, because it is essential that not only do we make sure that we participate in our educational systems, going to the parent council meetings and sitting on the parent boards, but actually somehow in any way that we can, shaping and shifting the curriculum of our children so that they understand what they need to know. Many of us did not grow up with what we need to know. Our systems were lax in teaching things like financial responsibility, financial literacy. We're talking about ujamaa. We need to know something about finances. Many of us have suffered. Many of us can be wonderful artists, but if we don't know that much about business, we still struggle and have a hard time. And our educational systems, if we don't change the structure of our curriculums, our children will not learn the value that they actually have. They won't learn the history that they need to know. They won't become convinced of the potential that they have. So we have to not just participate in what already exists. We need to take a very careful look at what needs to change. Thank you again, Brother Stephen. Our fifth principle is Nia, which is for purpose. And of course, we all know that we all have a purpose, but everybody hasn't quite figured out what it is. And so we're going to hear now from Corey Muldoon, Laura Mokoff, and family.
Hi, I'm Corey Muldoon.
I'm Laura Molkoff. This is Jean.
And I'm Bailey. The favorite principle of Kwanzaa is Nia.
And Nia means purpose, speaks to living our lives with clear intention, supporting our collective growth. Nia calls on people of African descent, which is all of us in one way or another, to make their collective vocation the building and developing of community in order to restore people with their traditional greatness. With too many brutal examples of the African American families and communities being damaged in our country, we all must be committed to supporting and developing greatness in the Black community.
Nia puts a duty on our community to make a commitment to families and neighborhoods so that they function in a manner that affords children and adults optimal conditions for developing and thriving. Of all the settings that help make us human, the family provides the most important developmental conditions. The love and care that a child needs to live and grow. A healthy child and future adult is one who has devoted people there to love them, spend time with them, challenge them, and who are interested in what they accomplish and who they want to become in life. We live our purpose with the intent of ending systemic oppression and building up individuals, families, and communities so that we have the collective strength to dismantle structures that limit people's development, well-being, and greatness.
All right, can you say Nia? Nia.
Thank you so much. Thank you for those reflections on the importance of having a purpose. And now we move to our sixth principle of Kwanzaa, which is Kuumba, for creativity. Everybody will please say Kuumba.
Kuumba.
All right, for creativity. And we know that creativity goes beyond singing and dancing. We write books, we write plays, we build architectural structures, we do agriculture, we build buildings, and every now and then at the end of the month, we have to get real creative trying to pay for those bills too, don't we?
Mm-hmm.
And so for this one, we're going to ask for Gwendolyn Dunnigan to speak to the importance of Kuumba, creativity.
How I got over, how I got over. You know that my soul looks back and I wonder, you know that My soul looks back and I wonder how I got over. Hamarigani, the sixth principle. Today, I want to say good morning. My name is Gwendolyn Dunnigan, and I'm a proud member of this congregation. And the sixth principle is creativity. Kuumba, creativity. And in 1966, when Dr. Karenga talked about creativity, his focus was on leaving our community better and more beneficial than the one that we had created. But as I reflect on this principle, creativity, I understand that one has to survive in order to be creative. From the African diaspora in the 1500s until 2000, people who have been kissed by nature's sun, in which I am a relative, have faced many enormous challenges, injustices, inequality, denied rights, civil rights, and human rights. But we rose to address these matters at hand, and against all odds, we survived. We've contributed, as Mama Edie have said, we've contributed to building nations. Today, I have a renewed hope that we as a people will rise above all of the challenges that are before us to achieve all that we have been created to achieve. Because I have heard the voices of the youth around the world. No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace. And our lives matter also. So as we journey toward collective liberation, may the path be brightened with love, hope, courage, and humanity. Ashe.
Asheo, Asheo. Thank you so much, Mama Gwendolyn. So much that was just spoken there. And I so greatly appreciate you putting those expressions on our hearts. There's so much that we have to do. There are ways that we can creatively continue to help each other to decolonize our minds. And that is the reason why we really need to deal with our educational systems, to deal with the kinds of educational foundation that our children are being given. And we need to break out of this cycle of the mindset that keeps telling us what we can't do, and to recognize what we've already done. And that's why history is so important. And that's why our historians are so important. That's why storytelling is important, to remind us of what we have done, and therefore what we can definitely continue to achieve. And then the seventh and final principle of Kwanzaa is Imani. Everybody will please say Imani. And we know that Imani means faith. And so if you know any young girls whose names might happen to be Imani, one of my nieces is named Imani, we know that anytime we speak her name, that it's an opportunity for her to be reminded that she needs to have faith in herself. And it can be an opportunity for us to say to her, we have faith in you and who you can yet become. So this principle will be spoken to by Alexander and Amos Biggers.
Thank you.
Ashe.
Ashe. The Imani principle teaches us to have confidence in ourselves, parents, teachers, leaders, and community. The following reading is a folktale taken from the Kwanzaa WordPress guide.
A cow and a frog's family. A long time ago, all the animals lived in a land called I Go See It. The king of that land was a very clever person. He divided the animals according to their kind and showed each king where to live. Some were to live on dry land while the others lived in the water. But there was only one river where all the animals drank water. The frog and members of his family used to live in the river. Cows also drank water from the same river and made the water dirty. The frog and members of his family raised their heads and called the cows names, saying, "You cows have no shame. You don't see that you are using up and ruining the water for us?" The cows, however, never stopped drinking the water. When they were done, one of the cows told the frog and members of his family, "Frogs, what's your problem? This river has enough water for all animals, but it's only you who complain. You should know that a cow cannot stop drinking water just because frogs are complaining."
The moral of the story is whenever one engages in a prosperous idea, project, business, program, or other venture, there are those negative associates who introduce discouraging aspects. Never stop venturing or expanding your horizons just because frogs are complaining. But know this, the frogs may be within you. Yes, those are the I can'ts, buts, ifs, and other excuses which stop or discourage you from pursuing the ideas your mind has conceived and believed in. These are your frogs. If you listen to the frogs in your life, you will do nothing to advance yourself.
Ashe. Ashe. Wonderful. Thank you all so much. So here we have our Kwanzaa table. We've had all these wonderful thoughts and reflections and this great story and reminders of who we are. And that's what the business of decolonizing our minds is about. Remembering who we are. Memory is powerful. Memory will help us to know which way we need to go from here. Memory will help us to see the beauty that was so elusive before. To understand that we don't need to look like nobody else. We don't need to have hair like anybody else's. We don't need to be lighter. We don't need to be darker. All we need to do is to get in touch with the divinity inside of who we are and be that unapologetically. And know from that, all life can grow. And so I thank you for sharing in the expressions and the reflections on these principles. And now we're going to have a reminder that we need to rise up. We can't just sit still. We gotta all be activists in one way or another. It doesn't have to be any big way. You don't have to get in the newspapers or write a book, but we have to all participate in some kind of way. We've got to rise up. And so I'm gonna turn it over one more time to the young sister, Kopano Muhammad, who is going to sing for us, Rise Up.
You're broken down and tired of living life on a merry-go-round, and you can't find the fighter, but I see it in you, so we're gonna walk it out and mountains. We're gonna walk it out and mountains. And I'll rise up, rise like the day. I'll rise up, rise unafraid. I'll rise up, I'll do it 1,000 times again. And I'll rise up, high like the waves. I'll rise when the silence isn't quiet, and it feels like it's getting hard to breathe, and I know you feel like dying, but I promise we'll take the world to its feet and move mountains, bring it to its feet and move mountains. And I'll rise up, rise like the day. I'll rise up, rise unafraid. I'll rise up, do it 1,000 times again. For you, for you, for you. All we need is hope, and for that we have each other. And for that we have each other. Oh, we will rise, we will rise, we will rise. Oh, we will rise. Now rise up, rise like the day. I'll rise up in spite of the age. I will rise 1,000 times again. And we'll rise up high like the waves. We'll rise up in spite of the ache. We'll rise up, do it 1,000 times again. For you, for you,
Ashe. Thank you so much, Sister Capano. And we're going to ask now, that was so wonderful. I know you all are inspired to go rise up, right? Don't go out there and rise up. There's so many ways to rise up. We just have to remember that we have the power and the right to do so. Thank you again for sharing this celebration. I'm going to turn it over to Joseph Harrington now for some closing words, and we'll be extinguishing our candle table, our Kwanzaa table.
Thank you, Mama Edie, and I want to thank everybody that participated in today's service. And I was reminded as I listened to Capano sing Maya Angelou's great poem, I Rise, and so still like dust, I rise. And as we approach the end of today's service, I'm also reminded of the words on the back doors at the back of our church. Back to the world of the many, to fulfill the life of the one, for ye shall go out with joy and be led forth with peace. So that you may be led forth with peace, I want to close with these words from Diane Reeves' song, Testify. I think that there's a time in your life when you realize that whatever is eating you, whatever it is that you're running from, whatever it is that you're afraid of, you just have to stop. Take a deep breath, turn around and face it. Face it. Stick your arms out as wide as you can and embrace it. Hold on real tight. You see, the tighter you hold on to it, the smaller it gets. and you just embrace it and embrace it until you find yourself embracing yourself. Then you can move on with peace of mind and all that stuff. Just leave it behind. And she goes on to sing these words. Sometimes you won't understand why life is the way it is. Things don't always go the way you plan. But I believe God and time are synonymous. And through time, God reveals all things. You gotta be still, stand in love, and pay attention. So let it be. Amen. Ashe. While today's service has come to an end, our service continues.